Today, we're diving into something I think a lot of us know all too well. That feeling of silence when you desperately want to speak up. We're going to break down the anatomy of why we avoid confrontation. So let's go to that specific moment. You know the one. A coworker takes credit for your idea. A friend says something that just doesn't sit right. And before you can even form a thought, you feel it. That unmistakable lump forming in your throat. Your body just takes over. And boom, this is what happens, right? Your chest gets tight, your heart starts pounding out of your chest, and your throat feels like it's literally closing up on you. It's like the words are right there, but they're physically blocked. There's just no way to get them out. Yeah, we're calling this whole thing the throat closing moment. It's that jarring disconnect between what you know you should say and what your body will actually let you do. Think about it. Your mind is just screaming. It's got a list of all the calm, perfect, assertive things you could say. But on the outside, nothing. You just smile, you nod, and you hear yourself say something like, "It's fine." And just like that, the moment's gone, and all that's left is that sinking feeling of regret. Okay, so this is maybe the most important thing you need to hear today. Get this. You didn't choose silence. Your body chose safety. This isn't some failure of your character. It's actually a wild success of your body's ancient survival programming. So let's really dig into that, because it's time to completely reframe this experience. We're talking about safety here, not weakness. You know that voice in your head, the one that beats you up afterwards? Well, when it's telling you, "I'm so weak," what's actually happening is a powerful nervous system reaction. When you feel like you lack self-respect, that's just your brain following an old, outdated safety map. And that classic line, "I'm just too sensitive"? Nope. The truth is, it's an incredibly accurate survival response. It's just based on old data. So let's be really clear. This habit of constantly avoiding conflict, it's not really about keeping the peace. It's anxiety. And it's just wearing a very, very convincing mask of harmony. You're not actually creating peace. You're just desperately trying to manage a threat that your body thinks is real. So how does this all happen so fast, so automatically? Well, it all comes down to your brain's built-in alarm system. See, deep in your brain, you've got this little almond-shaped thing called the amygdala. Think of it as your body's smoke detector. And for a lot of us, that detector is incredibly sensitive. Science actually shows us that social rejection lights up the same parts of the brain as physical pain. So to your amygdala, an annoyed tone of voice can feel just as dangerous as a tiger in the room. And this brings us to a really crucial idea. We've all heard of fight or flight, but researchers have identified another key survival response. It's called the Fawn Response. And it's a strategy where instead of fighting the threat or running from it, you try to appease it. You try to make it happy so it won't hurt you. So what does fawning actually look like in practice? Well, first, you immediately try to appease the other person. Then you become almost instantly agreeable, nodding along, cooperating. And finally, you minimize yourself. You make yourself smaller, less noticeable, because somewhere along the way, you learn that being invisible was the safest way to be. So where did this all come from? This pattern wasn't created yesterday. We have to go back and figure out where the silence began. For most people, it starts in one of two childhood environments. Maybe it was a chaotic home where a parent's mood was a landmine, and you learned really fast that disagreeing meant danger. Or maybe it was the opposite. A perfectly calm home on the surface, but one where your feelings were always dismissed, where you were told you were being too sensitive or too dramatic. And in both of those situations, you learn the same quiet, devastating lesson, that expressing difficult emotions or having needs or setting boundaries, well, it makes you less lovable. So you didn't just start keeping the peace to avoid a fight, you did it to stay worthy of love. Okay, so that is the why. That's the deep stuff. But we're not going to just leave it there. Let's get practical and talk about the how. How do you actually start to find your voice again? First, we have to be honest about the true cost of silence. It is not free. Every single time you say yes when you mean no, you're making a deposit into what you could call a resentment bank account. And those feelings don't just vanish, they turn inward. They become that tension in your jaw, the knots in your shoulders, maybe even that chronic fatigue you can't explain. And we have to call this niceness what it really is. It's not a virtue. It's a strategy. It's a tactic to manage other people's reactions so you don't have to feel their anger or disappointment. But real, genuine kindness, that's something different. It's rooted in truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable. So where do we start? The key is to start small. I mean, tiny. First, just use a strategic pause. A simple phrase like, let me think about that, can interrupt that instant people-pleasing reflex. Second, practice micro-confrontations. We're talking low-stakes stuff, like sending your food back if the order is wrong. And third, and this is the hardest one, you have to learn to sit with the guilt. That feeling is just your nervous system's old alarm bells going off. And please, let this one sink in. When you set a tiny boundary and your heart starts racing, that is not a sign of failure, it is the sound of victory. It is your nervous system in real time retraining itself. It's learning a new lesson. You can speak up and you will survive. Which brings us to our final and honestly most powerful idea, redefining what peace even means. It's about finding a kind of peace that exists way beyond just simple compliance. I mean, just look at the difference here. The peace you get from compliance, it's fragile, it's built on silence, and it depends on everyone liking you all the time. But the peace that comes from alignment with yourself, that is solid. It's built on truth, it actually allows for real connection, and it only depends on one thing, you being yourself. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. The true connection, the intimacy that we're all looking for, it requires truth. And truth simply cannot exist in any relationship where your voice is missing. So, I want to leave you with this to think about. What has your silence cost you? And maybe more importantly, what could you finally gain by finding your voice?